Friends, today I'm bringing you an opening that's going to make you win many, many games. It's super easy to play for starters, and it's also going to bring you incredible results because people don't know how to play against it. That's the most important thing of all. We've seen this opening on the channel before, but today we're going to dive a little bit deeper. We're talking about the bishop's opening, bishop c4. Very well, we're used to, right? Playing knight f3 normally as a first move, huh? To attack this pawn to keep the initiative. However, bishop c4 as a first move is almost never seen in any game. That's why it hides so many secrets and has many points in its favor, not having developed this knight to f3. We're going to see it next. Very well, how are we going to play when we make the move bishop c4? Well, the most typical response from black is to play knight f6. Why? Well, logically, they're developing one of their four minor pieces, and also, and this is the most important thing sorry, they're threatening this pawn right here. That is, it's the only developing move that maintains the initiative because it forces us to defend the e4 pawn. That's why it's the most used move. How should we defend this pawn? Well, the move we're going to use is d3. Simply put, we've developed our bishop. Now we can play d3 because we're no longer blocking its exit. Also, we're clearing a strategic path for our other dark squared bishop. Now, I'm going to thoroughly explain the specific plans we have in this opening because you're going to really enjoy playing it quite a lot, even in your own tournaments, right? A totally logical move here for black is bishop c5. In fact, players who have less than 2000 elo, less than 1800 elo, usually always make the same moves, knight f6, bishop c5, as if it were an Italian opening, right? That's why these two moves are the most common. Careful, they're good moves. They're developing in a natural way. We're going to continue developing this knight here. Knight c3. Remember well when you play this bishop's opening, not to develop the knight to f3 for now, but the knight to c3. Why? Because we usually have two main plans that you have to remember in this opening. One would be the move f4, okay? If the knight is on f3, we couldn't make this advance, and the other plan would be the pin with bishop g5. We can use these two plans as it suits us. For example, if they decide to castle directly here, a great move is to play bishop g5, effectively pinning this knight on f6. You have no idea how good this move is. By not having developed the knight to f3, we've gained a tempo, since now we're threatening to jump with knight d5, putting a lot of pressure on this knight on f6. This definitely looks extremely dangerous for the black pieces, as they'll have a hard time defending. I mean, if this pawn were on d6, they could play the knight from b to d7. But since this pawn isn't on d6, they can't come over to defend this knight. Therefore, if they play d6, we could immediately jump in with this knight to apply a lot of pressure. If they then play knight d7, our plan would be to keep pressing, and I'll explain that now. But first of all, you need to know something that's gonna give you goosebumps. What happens if they try to kick out this bishop? It seems pretty logical, right? If they kick out this bishop, well, we could play bishop a4, a very natural move to maintain the pin. However, here we have a wonderful move, the classic fishing pole with h4. In this opening, it works very well. It works very well. Why? Because without the knight on 3, we have a clear path to bring the queen into the attack. Great idea. I mean, why, chess teacher, are we giving away the bishop? Just so I'm clear. Well, simply, if they capture this bishop, you see, if they don't capture it, then the pin remains active and they've achieved nothing with the move h6. It's that simple, right? So what happens if they capture? We recapture at the pawn, h takes g5, and then we're threatening this knight. The knight, which was the true defender of the castled king, not only defends the h7 square, but also these two squares, which are the queen's entry points. So the knight is threatened, and when it moves, the winning move is queen h5 with a massive battery. Rook and queen attack the knight, a knight that's going to end up lost. And not only that, but we're going to deliver checkmate here anyway. I mean, if they're careless, obviously we made. But normally they'll try to escape. They can't escape with this pawn thanks to our bishop. See, this pawn is panned. They might try to escape with the rook so that when we capture, they can run with the king, and then when the queen comes here, keep running with the king. So there's a way to finish this very easily. Remember well, when they try to escape with the rook, all you have to do is queen takes f2, or sorry, queen takes 7. It's important to take here before the knight, forcing the king to move over here now. And the simplest way to finish is by sacrificing our rook for the knight. Rook takes h7, check, forcing the black king to capture. And now, simply, thanks to our bishop, queen h5 would be made, as the king couldn't escape through the back or the front. It's that simple. E4, e5. We play bishop c4 first. Okay. Important to bring out the bishop first, knight f6. We defend the pawn with d3, bishop c5, and now knight c3. Remember well, if they castle here, the winning plan is bishop g5. But what if they don't castle? Let's say, for example, they play the move d6. One of the moves I see most in this position, since they've developed the bishop, oh, sorry, the knight and the bishop, now they want to try to develop their other bishop and their other knight, and the move d6 seems perfect. It defends the center, opens a path for the light scored bishop, they can castle on the next move. All of this seems perfect. However, this is where our 4 plan comes in. A very strong plan. Don't worry if you don't remember the ideas and mix up terms or try to play bishop g5 or things like that, you'll also do very well. This opening is played in a very comfortable way. However, here are the strongest plan of all when they play d6, which, as you know, is a very popular setup for the black pieces. f4 is an extremely strong move. What does f4 threaten? Well, the threats here are simple, and in fact, we have two. One would be to capture here, for example, play knight f3, and put a lot of pressure on this pawn right here. Pay attention here to the great move we have by not having developed our knight, because if we had developed this knight, the pawn couldn't move out, right? With the pawn on f4, we can place the knight behind it, and both pieces are putting a lot of pressure on the e5 point, thus gaining a lot of space. In addition, we can capture, castle, and place our rook on this file, along with the bishop, to apply tremendous pressure with all the pieces on this point. Very well. One threat is this, right? Capturing. Another threat is advancing. In this way, we shut in the bishop on c8, which cannot go further than d7. And not only that, but we gain a tremendous space advantage on the king side, right? So we have two clear threats. The first would be to capture, and the second to advance. That's why many people decide to capture. But if they do, they would simply give us a tremendous development advantage. We've developed both of our bishops to very good squares. Then we'll play knight f3 and castle, and once again, we'll have the rook in a super favorable spot. So here, what's the move I see most when I play f4? Well, the move I see most isn't capturing or letting themselves be captured or anything like that. The move I see most is knight g4, a move that, at first glance, they always try to play against us. Many people are tempted to try this typical attack, similar to the fried liver, right? Or what's this attack called now? The Fegatello attack, right? Knight f2, attacking the queen and also attacking the rook. What they don't know is that this attack isn't a good attack against the bishop's opening. They'll think we're playing something weird. We haven't developed the knight, we haven't castled, we have a pawn here in a strange way. They'll think we're doing weird things, but really, the ones playing in a weird way are them. They're discoordinating their pieces, they only have two, and with two, they won't do anything. We continue with the brilliant move 5. Why is it so important to throw the opponent's pieces out of sync? We don't care if they try the fried liver attack on us, attacking the queen and the rook, because it's already too late. Our pieces are well coordinated, and the queen and bishop can join the attack, while their pieces can't get in anywhere. From here, we would proceed as follows. They attack our queen and our rook. We'll move the queen to h5. It's already too late for our opponent to defend. Thanks to our well-placed bishop on c4, we're threatening checkmate in 1. They can't move forward because it's pinned. Moving forward here would be a huge mistake, because after capturing, they couldn't recapture with the h-pawn since the rook is completely pinned. They'd have to recapture with the g-pawn, leaving the king totally exposed to the file, and the variation would end in a loss. That's why the most common move here to protect this point is short castling. At first glance, it seems like a good move, right? The king and rook defend both points. However, they're already too late. There's no way to stop the attack from the white pieces. How should we continue? Well, the most powerful and effective response we have here is the one we are about to see right here. We bring one of our available pieces that are left into the attack, gaining a crucial tempo. Bishop to g5, directly attacking this queen on d8, which has practically only two squares, right? Queen to d7 or queen to e8. It really doesn't matter where it goes. It makes no difference because we have a very clear advantage in piece activity. That is, our pieces, pay attention now. Knight, bishop, bishop, and queen are all attacking the enemy king. Well, it's true, they can capture our rook, they can do whatever they want. However, we're already winning. Now we bring in our last piece, knight to d5. Many might think we're attacking this point, but no. What we're doing is, for example, it doesn't matter what they do. Look, they're up a rook and a knight. However, we have such an attack that they can't do anything. The winning move here is a double exclamation mark move. Whenever you want, you can pause the video to try and guess it. I'll give you 3 seconds if you want to practice. And the key move is knight to f6, double exclamation mark. Obviously, this knight must be captured for two reasons. It's giving check, it's going to take the queen, and it's going to lead to checkmate. This knight must be captured, and once it is, there's no direct check, but there's the move bishop takes f6, pinning the enemy king, and there's simply no move that stops this check and the subsequent mate on g7. For example, knight to d6 attacking the bishop, we don't care. Queen to g5 check, and queen to g7 checkmate. If you're more aggressive players, I recommend that when they play knight to f6, attacking this pawn, instead of the move we just mentioned, d3 defending, you go into a very interesting variation that I once mentioned on the channel, though not in such depth. The move is d4. Very, very, very interesting. It's true, we're not defending this pawn on e4, and they can capture it. But this is a mistake, friends, because after pawn takes pawn, d takes e5, this knight is going to be difficult to get out, right? This knight is hard to move back. For example, these two squares are defended by our great pawn on e5. Here it's covered by the bishop, here by the pawn. Here it's not covered by anything, but it would have serious threat issues. I mean, if it tried to retreat now, we could come over here threatening a lot, right? This knight has problems. So here, the most common move, according to the database, is bishop c5 again. Very interesting. I won't deny that. They're threatening this f2 point again. Thanks to these videos, you're starting to lose your fear of these threats, right? Many of you might be thinking here that you should play, say, bishop d3, knight a3, right? Trying to defend this attack from the black pieces. However, many times we just focus on defending when we actually have advantageous attacking positions. For instance, here's an example. You could sacrifice the bishop on f7, check, and then come in with the queen and you'd win back this knight, thus gaining an extra pawn. And not only that, but the opponent's king would also be totally exposed, right? This would be an example of how you could win without defending this point here. However, sometimes there are stronger attacks that don't even need to sacrifice pieces. For example, directly Queen d5 and Scotch Gambit variations. Those of you who've studied it know that this battery with Queen d5 is very strong. We attack checkmate and we attack the knight. The intermediate move of knight g5 defending doesn't work because we'd eliminate it and then enter on f7. That's why here, the black pieces, for example, should castle. But what happens if they try to castle? Well, we can keep attacking. And how can we keep attacking? Well, for example, we could take this knight right here. Very well. You'd be surprised to know what the most common move is here for the black pieces. The most common move of all is before castling to capture while given a check. And that makes a lot of sense. I'll show you because I'm sure many of you are thinking about it. Here, when we play queen d5 instead of castling, they realize they can give this check, right? Because we're threatening checkmate, yes, but if we're in check, we have to move the king. But that doesn't worry us, since we're still threatening checkmate, And once they move, we can capture this knight, right? What if the black piece is game? A pawn. But now we're attacking a bishop that, without a doubt, must retreat. And not only that, but now we're launching a tremendous attack on the enemy king. First of all, we develop our knight to f3, for example, and as we can see, all the pieces are coordinating to attack the enemy king. For example, here the most common move is c6, preparing two things: the retreat of their bishop, which isn't doing much anymore, and the possible, right? The 5 move to open up the position a bit, since we have the king in the center. It makes a lot of sense. However, they're not in time. The winning combination here is the following: Bishop d3, so that we threaten checkmate. Often, what do threats do? They cause weaknesses for our opponent. They have to weaken themselves with what move? With g6. Logically, here it wouldn't be possible. For example, f5 stopping the threat, because we'd capture en passant and the threat would remain, right? They must play g6. And what does that do? When they have the pawns on white, nobody defends the black squares. Therefore, the bishop can enter. Many of you will think bishop h6, a tremendous move. It certainly is, but here we're helping our opponent a bit. Much better is bishop g5 threatening a queen. We threaten the queen, and not only that, but here we practically have the game won with the next move, bishop f6. This is starting to sound familiar, right? After the d5 move, which is the most common, we move the queen to the attack. I'm going through all this so you understand how to win, because if I just show you the 3 opening moves, you won't know how to continue. I prefer to explain everything correctly. And we're threatening queen h6, playing mate. Sorry, winning with checkmate. Here, the only one that stops it is h5. But here, I'm gonna let you think for 3 seconds about a wonderful move that ends up winning the game. Come on, let's see who finds it. You can stop the video, all those who want to do the thinking exercise. The best move here is the brilliant queen sacrifice. Very hard to see, friends. Very hard to see. Queen takes h5. Obviously, they must take the queen because we're coming in with queen a checkmate. So when the queen is captured, look what a wonderful move, huh? Knight g5 and the checkmate on h7 is inevitable. The king can't move to any square. And not only that, but they can't be given an escape route either. So here, whatever the black pieces do, we'd simply play bishop h7, checkmate. Wonderful. Of course, we just studied that by playing d4, this more aggressive variation. If they captured our e4 pawn, we'd come out winning. But the correct reaction for black is to capture the d4 pawn. Chess teacher, you can't leave without telling me how to play if they give me the correct reaction. Well, very well, here we wouldn't recapture immediately. It wouldn't be a bad move, but I recommend a much better one, which is now knight f3. A much better move. Chess teacher, you're going crazy, and now you're leaving the other pawn here. Our opponent is up 2 pawns. Well, now we can get one back, right? So technically, we're down a pawn, but in exchange for what? In exchange for tremendous activity. The queen is active, threatening the knight. So we have the initiative. This knight must move. It can't be defended with d5 because, quite simply, we capture the pawn. So it must move. We've got the bishop and knight out, and we'll castle on the next move. For instance, if they play knight to d6, the most popular move to threaten our bishop, we castle kingside. The situation: we have 2 pieces and the queen active, and we've already castled. Our opponent has all pieces on the 8th rank, can't castle yet, and the knight is slowing him down a bit. Black's best reaction seems to be knight takes c4, getting rid of the bishop pair and a brutal bishop. However, at this point, we'd already have the game won. What do you think? We've already won the game. The right move isn't queen takes knight, though we'd still be ahead, but rook to e1, a fantastic intermediate move. We'd check the king. How can they stop this check in 2 moves? Well, they could give up the knight, but that would simply delay their doom by 1 more move, wouldn't it? It can play queen to d7, queen to e7, giving up the queen, a huge mistake, but bishop to e7 is also a huge mistake. Why? Because it stops defending the g7 square. Queen takes g7 will win the game. Remember that well. Right now, we're down a piece, down a piece. They've taken our knight, but we're still threatening the rook, and we finish it off with bishop to h6. And as you can see, checkmate is inevitable. What do you mean inevitable, chess teacher, if it's well defended? No, because after queen takes f8, it's checkmate. The king can't take because of the bishop. and the bishop can't take because it's pinned by our rook on d1. Look how strong that rook pin is. The sharpest of you will have noticed that after taking this pawn, instead of knight to d6, they can play knight to f6, right? Which is a very natural move, and they don't get blocked at all. Well, don't worry because I'll show you a quick plan that will always work for you. Remember these ideas well, because you're going to win many games this way. We come to pin this knight with this bishop, right? We pin the queen. Very well, our opponent can do anything. The most sensible move is definitely bishop to e7, defending against this very strong pin. If not, we could start exchanging these pieces. Two doubled and isolated pawns on the f file wouldn't be a good idea. And now we change plans. Knight to c3. For what? Not just to bring more pieces to the attack, but to castle queenside, friends. Very good idea. For example, things you should know about this opening. If they attack your queen, where should you put it? If they attack your queen, you should put it on h4. Why? Because it's very hard to kick out. They can't kick it out from anywhere. Something they often try is h6, a move that's useless because they don't threaten the bishop since the rook is undefended. So a better move here would be, for example, a castling, right? And they could play h6 afterwards, right? We castle queenside, placing the rook on the same file as the queen. Very good move. We're in a wonderful position, and from here, we're making very strong threats. For example, bishop to d3. You don't need to memorize all of this, you just need to understand it to apply it in your games. We're threatening checkmate with the queen and bishop. Simply, what we'd have to do is bishop takes knight, removing this piece and delivering checkmate. This is the most obvious one. How can the black pieces try to save themselves from this situation? For example, by playing h6. Why? Because now, if we trade, what would happen? They wouldn't have queen takes h7 checkmate anymore, since this pawn would be blocking it. So how do we continue? Well, in a simple way. This way, we can even sacrifice the bishop. Bishop takes h6, pawn takes h6, and queen takes h6. So that now, one way or another, checkmate's gonna be inevitable. It really doesn't matter what they do to us. We're simply gonna move in with all our pieces. They pin this knight, I don't care at all. I'm gonna move in with the knight too, and you won't have any way to stop this checkmate. Practical example. If they come to take the rook, simply the only thing we'd have to do is move in with the bishop. If they take with the knight, checkmate with the queen. And if they move the king, well, we could also deliver checkmate in more than one way. But why complicate things if here, instead of moving in with the bishop, we should think about which piece is bothering us for the checkmate? The knight? Well, I'm coming to eliminate it. If you capture it, I'm going to give you mate, and that's it. This knight can't move. And if he does anything else, it really doesn't matter to us. So we'll capture the knight ourselves, and when they capture back, now we can move in to deliver checkmate. In this case, we do queen h7 checkmate, king f8, and queen takes f7 checkmate. I hope you loved this video. If you loved my way of explaining and all the concepts I've explained, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like, which costs you absolutely nothing and makes me very happy. If you like this board with coordinates, I'll bring more explanatory videos with this board, since I love recording this type of video, if you'll excuse the redundancy. Also, today I recorded sitting here at the table, so I've gotten much less tired than usual. I've been able to explain with much more clarity. I hope you loved this video, friends, and we'll see each other tomorrow, as always, with another new video. Goodbye.